just starting your wellness journey or anywhere in between, Detox Digest is your go-to resource for gathering the knowledge and tools to support your body's natural cleansing and healing processes using diet, herbs, and Dr. Morse's formulas.
And I'm Jen Billingham.
And I'm Colleen Bingham. So far this year, we've covered the urinary, immune, lymphatic, digestive, endocrine, and nervous systems. We're running out of systems over here. For archived blogs and webinar recordings on these systems, visit our Body Systems blog tab under the Learn tab at drmorses.com. Today, we have a very special treat for you all. We are doing the deep dive into the fascinating world of circadian rhythms, and we have a very special guest speaker, Dr. Vincent Esposito. Hello, Dr. Vincent. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
We're happy to have you here.
Absolutely. So yeah, now it's time. Grab your favorite herbal tea and let's get started. Stay tuned for valuable insights into how our circadian rhythm affects our overall health, tips on improving your sleep, boosting energy levels, and how to best support this system for vibrant well-being.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Let's go. Yeah.
Thanks, Jen. So yeah, we wouldn't be here without this man, Dr. Morse, whose life work it is to unlock the body's natural ability to heal by supporting its regenerative detoxification processes. And we invite you all to ask questions throughout this webinar. We have a Q&A feature. You can find a little talking bubble on your screen. If you click that, you can type your question in, and we have the fabulous Stephanie and Kim here with us, our amazing support team here at Dr. Morse's, and they will do their best to answer as many questions as they can. Of course, if you do not have your question answered during this shorter 30-minute webinar, you can always submit your inquiries to info@dmhhc.com. And we also invite you to please stay till the end. We are, just like every month, giving you some awesome discounts on all of the formulas that we're talking about today that are going to help you support your circadian rhythm.
All right, so let's review what today's agenda is going to cover. Again, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Vincent Esposito to this month's Detox Digest. Dr. Esposito is a holistic doctor with extensive training in chiropractics, nutrition, breathwork, and herbal medicine. He graduated summa cum laude from the University of Bridgeport College of Chiropractic and holds a master's degree in human nutrition. With a special interest in sports and athletic performance, as well as detoxification and iridology, Dr. Esposito brings a wealth of knowledge to our discussion. So we've asked him to join us today to discuss the physiology of sleep and how proper nutrition, digestion, and metabolism all contribute to a good night's sleep. So welcome, Dr. Esposito, and yeah, let's let you take it away here.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jen and Colleen, for having me on. It's an honor to be on here. I've been following Dr. Morse for a while, and being able to participate in this is great. So, but without further ado, let's get into kind of what the circadian rhythm is and why it's important, like why you should care. So, one of the reasons sleep became really important for me is being trained and using a lot of herbs in practice. You know, there's always something, there's always a group of people that don't necessarily progress the way that you would want them to. And as practitioners, I think we need to look at different areas of lifestyle that could play a role. And one of them is sleep. Now, why sleep is important is understanding what the goal of sleep is to begin with. And you can see here on the slide, the goal of sleep is to detox and repair. Now, when we wake up in the morning, we think that we actually gain energy. We're recovering, gaining energy when we wake up in the morning. The truth of the matter is most of that detox and repair happens when we're sleeping. So you look at the liver, the lymphatic system, the kidneys, a lot of these systems that you have covered in previous webinars are more active during those times of rest, and we're able to clear a lot of those things during the times that we're supposed to be sleeping, which is at night. And this is what the circadian rhythm really covers at the end of the day. It controls all of this. Our bodies, all the way down to each individual cell, is on a 24-hour clock that is controlled by our circadian rhythm. And you can even see, if you look in the top right, what some of those things are. So you'll notice, say, cortisol, for example, if we look at the bottom graph, is highest during the highest in the morning. It helps us wake up. and gets lower throughout the day, whereas the absence of light triggers melatonin, which helps put us to sleep, and it also shifts which organs are more active. So yes, if you're getting proper nutrition and digestion, that's all great, and that's going to be super helpful. But if we're not sleeping and repairing as best we can, it's going to lead to less than optimal results. And so we're going to talk about how we can get that going. So next slide, please. Okay, so the eyes are actually a direct extension of your brain. They are literally connected to the brain via a nerve called the optic nerve. Now, there are many different nerve endings that go to the eye. The primary ones that most people are familiar with are called rods and cones. Now, rods are much more prevalent. They are more responsible for seeing it, in light and dark. Particularly low light, rods become more active, but they're the light sensors as far as the intensity, the brightness. Cones are for color vision. They tend to come in 3 different flavors, red, green, and blue. And they also play a role in spatial awareness, and that's called photopic vision. Now, what isn't mentioned here, and you could see it a little bit here, actually it's on the next slide, so let's go to that. Yeah, so what isn't seen here is the other 60% of light that comes in the eye. Now, the visual spectrum of light is only 40% of the light that comes into the eyes. Actually, 60% of sunlight is invisible, imperceptible to human beings. So but that other 60% is really important as far as it goes to circadian function and how we act throughout the day. Now, all of that light, though, is able to pass through the eye and goes to a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. That is the master clock. It's the conductor of the orchestra as far as when certain cells and certain organs are most active. They set and reset those circadian rhythms. And that's all dictated by the light environment that we are in. And this is especially important in today's world when we have smartphones and screens that many of us are on a lot of the day. And so next slide. So as you can see here in the picture on the right, different wavelengths of light are going to trigger different things. And depending on what's coming in is going to enable certain things to happen. For example, we know that UV light allows for the production and utilization of vitamin D. And that's going to happen in this ultraviolet range, which is below 400 nanometers, right? That allows us to create vitamin D, and that's only about 6% of the energy given off by the sun. The other 54% is actually in the infrared range, and we perceive that as heat. What happens, though, is there's a specific color spectrum that comes off the sun at different times of the day that gets more expansive as the sun reaches noon, and that's going to include all of your UV and infrared. But in the morning and afternoon or evening, we lose some of that UV light and we have more infrared. That's why you see a warm tone in the sun. It is appear more orange or yellow or red in the morning and afternoon. And these are signals not only to tell us what time of day it is, but also which organs, which parts of the body need to be more active at certain times. So when the circadian rhythm gets disrupted, you can see kind of on the bottom here, exposure to different wavelengths of light, like it says 400 to 500 nanometer, that's blue light, at night is going to impact, potentially can disrupt your circadian rhythm, but also not receiving light in the morning. We're going to talk about that. Shift work. Shift work can be really impactful on having negative consequences when it comes to the circadian rhythm. And exposure to light in abnormal phones, i.e., say a cell phone or a computer, particularly at later times in the day, are going to negatively impact the circadian rhythm, which means we're not detoxing, we're not repairing as well as we possibly could be. Next slide. So what does that kind of look like? I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you, so I want to take a look at this bottom right image here so you can kind of see what's going on. So as far as the spectrum of what light is being given off. If we look at the back image, 4.6 billion years, that's the full spectrum of light that's given off by the sun. That's what we have adapted to as human beings and really all creatures in nature, plants, animals alike. Those spectrums are different, though, in the lighting that has come into our modern environment. And this has really only been around about 100, it's only been about 100 or so years since the light bulb has been invented, a little bit more than that now. So with the advent of fluorescent bulbs and LED bulbs, you'll notice you're not getting that same spectrum of light at the same intensities at different times. And what that's saying is, even though we perceive it as maybe white light coming off an LED light, we're actually only getting certain spectrums at certain intensities. And that can actually throw off how the circadian rhythm's working. And just to get an idea of like what organs can be impacted, it's everything from the top down, from the pineal gland, pituitary gland, which is, you know, those are your master controllers. We have the pineal that controls your sleep, melatonin production, pituitary, which is the master hormone gland. And if it's going to impact the master hormone gland, then it's going to impact everything below. You'll see thyroid function, thymus, lung, breast, heart, liver, adrenals. All of this is going to be impacted simply by the light signals that we perceive at certain times of the day. Next slide.
I love this chart, the years and the light.
It's
really
very powerful, honestly, because
I
I
never
don't
considered that before. Yeah.
Yeah, without seeing that, you're not seeing, I guess, the impact and you could see, especially this front one, when we look at the fluorescent bulbs. So if these are on, particularly at night, you're only getting really spikes in the green and blue, which are only most prevalent in the sun during those peak hours of the day, which you're talking, generally speaking, between 12 and 2, depending on where you are, you know, latitude-wise. It's the summer in the northern hemisphere, so it's longer. But when those are more prevalent, so when the sun's at its highest in summer months, right? We're in July going into August. That's when the days are longest. That's when we have the most energy. That's when that happens. But as it winds down and you're keeping these lights on, you'll notice people are having more trouble falling asleep. And a lot of that has to do with those lights being given off, again, by computer screens, by cell phones, etc. So yeah.
The lighting in your kitchen.
The lighting all over your house. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and yeah, that's actually a good segue right into this. So let's look at both sides of that. So if we start on the left, what do bright screens and bright light at night do? They're going to activate things known as melanopsin. Now, these are different receptors in the brain and body that respond to light. Now, you may have heard of melanin, and most people know of melanin as the substance that is responsible for the pigment in your skin. So people with more melanin in their skin tend to have darker skin tones. What's interesting, though, is we have different types of melanin in the brain and in the body that are effectively, melanin absorbs all light. And as we know, things that absorb light tend to be very dark in color, right? They're almost pitch black. What that means is melanopsins are going to absorb all light, even light that we don't necessarily perceive. So again, if we're getting those wavelengths of blue at times that we're not supposed to get them, it's going to have an impact on the body and brain at times where that wouldn't necessarily happen in a natural environment, say if we're living outside. What that does is disrupt circadian rhythm, which means certain organs that should be more active at night, like your kidney, liver, maybe don't get to that maximum function. It reduces the function of the sleep hormone production, which only happens in the absence of light. So when you have more blue light at times, say 9, 10 o'clock when the sun's down, or even later, now you're impacting your own ability to make melatonin, which makes it even harder to fall asleep. And now it becomes almost like a downward spiral, which leads to, of course, poor sleep. On the flip side, if we spend a lot of our time indoors during the day, we tend to have those same issues. We're not getting the rise in cortisol that we should, or at least at the ideal times. So we get reduced alertness, we get brain fog, we get sluggish kind of during the day. And then we're adding artificial light at night. So we're not being energetic at the times we should be because we're in darker environments, generally speaking. And even if you're behind a window a traditional glass window that actually blocks a lot of UV and infrared light anyway. So that's a whole another thing. But staying in the combination of spending time indoors, and the latest studies I've seen, 93% of our time, the typical modern American spends indoors, combined with the light from artificial sources, the artificial suns, if you will, the computer screens, the TVs, the cell phones at night, we're setting up an environment where our organs are not going to be functioning as well as they could, just strictly based on the light environment. Next slide.
Makes absolute sense.
Yeah. And what
Makes me
that
want to get
does-
outside.
Yeah,
Like right now.
And
Fortunately, I mean, the windows, I mean, we could go into that maybe later, but that plays a big role too. Now, what does this do is this impacts the functioning of your nervous system, right? Because again, the eyes are a direct projection of the brain. They are directly connected to it. What that really does is throw off in the autonomic nervous system, that sympathetic parasympathetic balance. And what we need if we're going to rest, repair, detox is be in that parasympathetic mode. When we're exposed to these lights, particularly at night, later in the day, or not getting it during the bright part of the day where cortisol should be higher, those get thrown off, and now you become more in a sympathetic dominant mode. And this is something, you know, as a chiropractor, we see and talk about all the time, because as doctors really of the nervous system, you'll hear things like adrenal fatigue or sluggishness or you know, sympathetic dominance. Any of these terms, they're all kind of leading towards the same thing. It's that there's an imbalance between sympathetic, parasympathetic. A lot of that has to do with our light environment, and to the point where there was a study that came out, I believe, last year. One of the things cortisol does is raise blood sugar levels, and they found that using an infrared light in a dark room at night would actually lower blood sugar levels, I should say, by on average like 23 to 25%, just by using light on like 1 square foot of someone's back for like 20 minutes a day.
wow.
Wow.
That's how
Amazing.
impactful light can be. And this isn't even in the eyes. This is just a cross section of the back. So pretty impactful stuff. Next slide. So, along with all the fantastic herbs that Jen and Colleen are going to get into, what are some other things that we can do to start maintaining and really resetting that circadian rhythm? So I wanted to give you some sleep protocols so you have some actionable tips or steps that you can take to really get this on track and take your healing journey to the next level. The first is creating a sleep routine and sanctuary. Now, the thing that I really will tell everyone on a first visit is, like, I abide by the 3-2-1 rule, which you can see as the first 3 bullets here. No food 3 hours before bed, stop liquids 2 hours before bed, stop screen time an hour before bed. You also want to unplug any electronic devices you have in your bedroom. Why? Because even if you're using, say, a digital clock, that's going to be emitting light into the room. Ideally, you want to have a pitch black room at night that you're sleeping in, which is why I recommend, if you're not in a dark setting and say you live in a city or somewhere that has street lights, use blackout curtains. Ideally, if you want to also take your sleep to the next level, you want your bedroom to be cool. Depends on the person, but generally somewhere between like 64 and 68 degrees is ideal. And I prefer if you could do it, you know, with a window open so you have fresh air coming in. Generally speaking, for most people, you want to be in bed somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m. every night, and you want to be consistent with it. This isn't something that you could do one day and expect it to kind of be great. This is something you have to get consistent with over time. If you're going to bed, say 12 o'clock, midnight every night, maybe slowly work that back in 15-minute intervals so you're not, and get more consistent with those sleep and wake times. Next slide. Sun exposure, that's kind of what we've been talking about. You want to optimize it. Now, I'm well aware not everyone's going to get outside 3 to 4 hours a day like they should. So how do we maximize it and get the most benefits that we can if, say, we work at home or in an office or what have you? The most important thing, if you're going to take one takeaway, it's getting 15 minutes of morning sun, particularly. Ideally when the sun rises. So if you can get up before the sunrise and see the sunrise, And that's ideally if you can, with nothing covering your eyes. So sunglasses, glasses, contacts. Why? Because those actually filter out some of that light that we were talking about. So if you can do
Even
it,
contacts.
contacts too. Yeah, they actually have UV and infrared filters. So
Wow.
most modern ones do.
Crazy.
Really, the only, it's not even glass, but quartz allows all spectrum of light to come in. Those are some other studies, maybe for another time we can go into. But
So we can hold up quartz glasses.
you can. That's the next billion-dollar industry. We need to get someone
I
to
love
make
it.
glasses out of quartz. Yes, that would be it. That would be
That's
great.
wonderful. I would wear those.
Yeah. That would be the number one thing. Ideally, we would want to get sun during the midday and evening too, to again just try to stay consistent and make sure that we're realigning that circadian rhythm as best we can. But the most important to resetting is going to be that morning sun, ideally sunrise. Next slide.
Yeah, it just makes me think about the difference between summer and winter and how there's already so many imbalances you see just from the sun not being up as long during the day. Like how we are really so in tune with the sun, and I love the idea of being there for the sunrise and the sunset from also a spiritual perspective as well.
Absolutely.
It's huge, and you know, there's plenty of studies that show this. I could have put them in, but as far as say seasonal affective disorder, I'm in New York. I know it's much more prevalent in these northern
Yeah.
states than say Florida, for
Big time.
example, places closer to the equator. That's not by accident. It's because we have longer days and shorter night. There's a wider gap as far as the day and night swings versus being closer to the equator. And going to that, talking about the spiritual side of it and making a habit out of it is, and I'm repeating myself here, but you need to give yourself an hour before bed without screens. So, you know, and workouts and work ideally. So really true winding down time to get into that parasympathetic mode. Because if we're on the screens, we're on the bright lights, or we're doing a heavy workout, you know, that's going to invigorate that sympathetic nervous system, and we can't have both active at the same time. It's either one or the other. Next slide. And that's good. So what can you do if you're not going to be on your phone or your computer? Reading's a great thing. Maybe try journaling, meditation. If you live with your family, I think board games or something like that you can bring everyone together. That's not on a screen. I think not only just from a connection standpoint, but a health standpoint, fantastic. Prayer, light yoga, stretching, all of these are fantastic options. And yes, it's probably something different than we're normally doing, but it does go a long way. And I mean, I know I've experienced it. I mean, how many times have you heard like, oh, you know, I was reading a book in bed and I fell asleep? That doesn't necessarily happen when you're watching 3 episodes of Netflix, you know, in a row to the same degree. Next episode.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Next episode, haha.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just end up on 5 episodes later. Oops.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly. And that goes right into this kind of final point here, which is again, get the electronics out of the bedroom. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's that important. That means no cell phone use in the bedroom. Now, if you need an alarm, okay, but if you could get away with using your cell phone on airplane mode and keeping it far away from you, as in you have to get up to get to your phone, great. Cordless phones, so no cordless phones. That has more to do with non-native EMFs, which I know we didn't go too much into today, but it's important. The same thing with wireless speakers. All of these are going to impact that. Yeah, the goal of the bedroom is to get as close to a natural outdoor environment as possible. And if we're having other sources of frequencies, which is light or phones or anything wireless, that's going to impact your ability to sleep. So no wearable electronics. Ideally, if you can unplug things, that's great. And of course, no fluorescent lights, LED lights in the bedroom. If you have them in your bedroom or you rent where you live, a good alternative if you need a night light is maybe get a salt lamp or a red light bulb that you could kind of plug in and use that as like an alternative light. Now, one thing I use with my wife in our house is we have a few salt lamps in strategic locations in our house, in our bedroom, bathroom, living room, to get around the house at night, so we're not using overhead lights. So as far as like setting up an environment, these 4 steps go a long way. And it's just about rebuilding a circadian rhythm so that you can get the sleep so that the kidneys, the liver, the lymphatic system, all these are functioning as best as they can.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Vincent. This is just
I was
so, it
just,
sounds so simple. And yet I'm just thinking to
it
myself
does.
how people are probably hearing this and being like, yeah, but switching these things is impossible. We're in our routine. It's like the switching is hard. I used to actually unplug my entire wireless network in my house when I lived alone, and I would go to sleep at night. I just really believed that much in the EMF
I do
Absolutely.
too. I do
frequencies.
too. I
Yeah.
actually mentioned it here. Yeah, I unplug mine at night for sure. If you can or have the ability to do that, even better. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, now it's tied to like 1,000 things in my house, and if it gets unplugged, I live with a guy that's really into tech. Yeah, so I wish I could, but I can't. But luckily I
I
still
got
sleep okay. All right. Well, we also have some herbal protocols to bring on board as well with the Dr. Morse formulas, because of course we totally agree with you. Sleep is really critical, and you don't just
Absolutely.
get there by putting yourself to bed sooner, right? There's just a
Yep.
lot that goes into setting up the space for good sleep. And you mentioned not drinking 2 hours before bed. A lot of our customers are drinking lots of tea. So remember to not drink your tea before bed, or you will be up in the night and you might have a hard time falling back asleep. I talk to countless people that have that story. So don't forget to stop drinking liquids.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. And even with
All right.
some of the herbal formulas, yeah, you can jump to this next slide or the protocol slide even if you want, Colleen. But some of the herbal formulas, I tell people, don't take anything after 5 if you really are, a little sensitive and need to urinate in the middle of the night, or where you're going to disrupt, your sleep rhythm. So, you can be aware and create your own little routine there too. But yeah, just to build off of what Dr. Esposito was saying, our recommendations, of course, they, contain a kidney and bladder formula, a lymph drainage formula, and something for the adrenals. Because if you remember back to an earlier slide, as he was discussing, the pituitary gland, and when the circadian rhythm is off, it just has that, cascading, that ripple effect. It will affect other organs. So you want to be sure, and it's at the cellular level. Every cell has its own cycle. So you want to make sure that, you're always supporting your kidneys, and because they have their daily fluctuations, and our lifestyles and, diets kind of contribute to this ebb and flow. And we need to keep our body fluids balanced, keep the lymph moving, because our lymph system is also influenced by our circadian rhythm. And as well as we also saw with the central nervous system and the adrenal glands. That's why we have the brain and nervous systems recommended, as well as the adrenal support. Happy Caps contains herbs that support the nervous system and endocrine system. That it also has that added benefit of helping you, relax. Like the spasm calm is also added in here, and to just help you, give you that added benefit of improving your quality of sleep. Because as your quality of sleep goes up, your quality of life should also, do the same. And then of course we all know the power of these herbs, and what they can do to help give that body the reset. Colleen, did you want to add anything or talk about a couple of the herbs and some of these formulas?
Well, it is time. So thank you, everyone. I know if folks have to go, we have a tendency to go over on these. If I'd known, we kind of threw Dr. Vincent into this mix, and if we'd known, of course, we knew he was a wealth of knowledge, but I think we could have done a whole hour with this presentation, with the wealth of knowledge that was just dumped. But yes, I do have a few herbs for folks that can stay, and then we have our discount code slide. So I just wanted to mention these because this is kind of, when we're talking about the herbs and why they work and why the formulas are so great, there's just some really incredible allies for sleep and for balancing and re-regulating your nervous system. And I think Skullcap is just up there as one of the best. I love it so much. And it's kind of under not well known, I suppose. It used to be called Mad Dogger because it's a great antispasmodic. And when you're thinking about trying to fall, yeah, so it didn't actually cure
Wow.
people of rabies, but that's what they were using it for back in the day. And I'm assuming it's calmed people down a little bit, but just when you think about your body after a long day and potentially a stressful day, there is a lot of musculoskeletal kind of nerviation that's going on, right? You're still kind of buzzing. And so an antispasmodic herb is really good at calming the nervous system and calming those kind of muscle spasms. And for me personally, one of the hardest things about falling asleep is getting my body to calm down. So I just find skullcap to be such an incredible ally for that. And so it's a tonic herb, it's gentle, it's got a little bit of a bitter flavor to it. It's in the mint family, although it's not as volatile as a lot of the other mints, but it's in both brain and nervous system and spasm calm. And I was going to say with the spasm calm formula that we were talking about in our protocols, I'm starting to suggest spasm calm across the board for folks with sleep imbalances because it has such an incredible, I mean, that's not necessarily what, the title of the product is, but it's just got St. John's wort in it. It's got lobelia in it. It's got skullcap in it. So it's a really calming formula for folks that are going into their evenings really jazzed. So then you've got hops.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely adding it to protocols where folks are saying they're having a hard time falling asleep or they're waking up in the night and they can't get back to sleep. I'm like, spasm calm. Just take 2 droppers full and also breathe and don't look at your phone and all of that other stuff, right? It's all of it. So then you've got hops, which I wanted to mention here. It's a strong sedative. Actually, some herbalists recommend this as a good one for after like a car accident, something where you're just so amped and your adrenals are so tapped that you just need even just a drop dose of hops and it can calm you right down. But there is a contraindication for hops with depression because it is so sedating, and depression is also a sedating type of imbalance, and so you don't want to kind of add fuel to the fire, and hops can do that. And if you have a tendency towards depression and you like to drink beer, I would say try discontinuing that, not only from the detox Dr. Morse perspective, where we don't really, agree with a lot of alcohol consumption, but also just because it's really high in hops. Most beers are very high in hops. And so if you're like, oh, I feel so crabby and sluggish and slow all the time, and I think I'm feeling that depressive state kind of kicking in, it could be the hops in your beer. Yep. Okay, so we do have a hops tincture that we sell, and that's a good one for supporting sleep and calm. And then we've got valerian, which is in our spasm calm. We also have valerian tincture on its own. And valerian is a very stinky herb, and those volatile oils have a great purpose. It's a sedative that specifically yeah, it's very stinky. It tastes really intense. Some people describe the smell as off-smelling perfume, like it's kind of like a putrid perfume. It's a beautiful plant to grow, and you would use the root in this case. And yeah, it makes a really intense tincture, but it's good in our spasm calm formula. I can't really taste it there. 1 in 5 folks have the adverse reaction to valerian, where it actually stimulates them. So just keep that in mind, but definitely a good one for sleep, and also specifically the REM cycle of sleep. So if you're having a hard time getting into your REM sleep, which is where they say the mind is resetting itself the most. So maybe add some valerian or some spasm calm if you are needing to drop into that REM sleep. And we've made it to the end, a little bit over 6 minutes, not so bad. So there's your code, SLEEP20. Those are the herbs we just discussed in the protocol. And so be sure to take a screenshot of this page. We'll also be emailing you right after we're done here, and you'll get that code and a link to all of these herbs, herbal formulas. We've put them all on one page to make it easy for you. And that code is good for 2 days. And then, of course, we want to yet again thank you so much, Dr. Vincent Esposito, for joining us today. That was so fun. Hopefully we'll get to do it again soon. This is all of his contact information.
Thanks for having me on. This was a blast, and it's great doing this with you guys.
Awesome. Yeah.
Amazing. Any parting words for us, Dr. Vincent?
I usually, like, anytime I do one of these, I just want you to know that, you're in control of your own health journey more so. And I understand, especially here in America, like so many folks, it gets scary, and sometimes it feels like that power is taken away from you. But we as individuals, as human beings, are literally designed to heal from the ground up, and it's just a question of creating an environment and space for that to happen. So understand that, and you can go, the sky's the limit, literally.
Well said. Awesome. Beautiful. Perfect way to end it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jen, as well. Good having you both here. Always a pleasure, and we'll see you next month.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
Guys. Thanks again, Dr. Esposito.